This entire House has you, Mr. Chairman, to thank for a lifetime of work in civil rights and human rights for all people, and I thank you here on the floor. I thank my good colleague who serves with me on the Government Reform Committee, and I especially thank my colleague John Lewis, who was chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee when I first joined. And I think I can say for John and me that neither of us expected to be on the floor of this House at that time. I thank you, John. I'm not surprised that you have come forward with this resolution. For me, it would be too poignant an occasion, but for the progress that I think we can say assures that these brutal murders, the murders that we came to call the Schwerner, Chaney, and Goodman murders, certainly have not been in vain. In 1963, Bob Moses, legendary figure of the Mississippi movement, recruited me while I was in law school to go to Mississippi. SNCC had opened up virtually every place else but not Mississippi because, frankly, it was terrorist country. And to show you the extent to which Mississippi was a different place, it took the NAACP and Medgar Evers to lead the sit-ins there, and they got beat unmercifully, and that's in Jackson. I came to the Delta, for an express purpose, to prepare for the 1964 Freedom Summer, when we knew we would be able to gather thousands of students to come down. It was at the high point of student activism, and we sure did. John and others went throughout the United States, and they came in huge numbers. We had the highest hopes. I was particularly working on the 1964 Democratic Convention with my mentor, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Larry Guyot, who now lives here, the co-chair of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, when working indeed on the brief that would be introduced to say that this delegation, rather than the official delegation which had excluded African Americans, should be recognized. And why was there a Mississippi Democratic Party? Because indeed, in the summer of '64, so many had come down to risk their lives, for whom that had to be a very real choice. Those high hopes were not extinguished when our delegation did not get. Those high hopes were not even extinguished when these brutal murders occurred. It took them weeks to find the three young men. Those high hopes remained high, and if anything, thrust the civil rights movement forward in a way it had not been before. Could I have another minute?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I yield the gentlelady the balance of my time.
The gentlelady is recognized.
How much time do we have, please? And I want to go over.
The gentlelady has 4.5 minutes.
Thank you. I won't take much longer. But this is a very special moment. In 1963, when I went to Mississippi, I had first worked for the March on Washington under Bayard Rustin, then went to the Delta. That was, I must say, the most eventful summer of my life, more eventful even than 1964. Medgar Evers put me on a bus. Medgar Evers tried to convince me to stay in Jackson. I said no. I said I was coming to the Delta, and put me on a bus to go to the Delta. He then turned around, went back home, and he was shot and killed in his driveway that same evening. That was that was a year I should never forget. But the fact is that the 64 summer, in fact, happened. The students did not go home after the murders. We continued to organize. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, with Fannie Lou Hamer leading the way at the convention, was the high point of that convention. And the country has never forgotten it. Democratized the Democratic Party, democratized even the Republican Party, and I must say that both parties recognized that they had to have representative delegations. When I have on occasion met the Schwerner brother, was one of my classmates in college. When I have met with the families, what has been extraordinary about them is to note that they understand the contributions they personally made to the freedom struggle. They have no regrets. They understand that the loss of youngsters from the North was the last thing we expected, and that loss helped to wake the country up. Do not forget what happened in '64, the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And that act contained Title VII, that something else, John, I could never have thought I would then come to enforce as a chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. This was the first in civil rights legislation since the radical Republicans gave us our first civil rights legislation after the Civil War. And look what happened afterwards. The 1965 Voting Rights Act and the 1968 Fair Housing Act. Oh no, these three young men died for a great and noble purpose. And in case the national panorama doesn't drive that home, surely the fact that Mississippi today has the largest number of black public officials will help you to see that they did not die in vain. And surely the fact that their relatives now see the first African American to secure the nomination of a major party for President of the United States drive home that these three young men at the dawn of their lives not only did not die in vain, but for generations to come, and yes, for this generation, have left a legacy. I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Matters